was, my father had a very nice job in Korea. Maybe some of you know that, or maybe you don't know that. So he graduated from Seoul National University. Maybe most of you know that, some of you may not know that. That's a very hard thing to do back in the 60s, because it was very competitive to get to that school. So having done that, he went and got a degree in linguistics. I sort of asked him, why did he get that degree in linguistics? And I guess he just had a love for languages, just the way that, how you can communicate to all the different kind of cultures and people of different speaking languages. But after he graduated, he ended up getting a job at, I believe, the Korean version of the CIA, I believe, because he had his linguistic degree. So he gave a very, very prominent, it seemed like a very comfortable position to move here. So it was a big sacrifice for him to move here. So I think that sort of lays a lot of trying to set the groundwork for what kind of person he was, because again, he had some very promising career, gave all that up when he had the opportunity to come to the United States, offered to do that, and really he started from ground level, if you will. So he moved here in I believe in the 60s. My father and mother both moved to Dallas, Texas, of all places, and that's partly because my mother had a nursing job at a hospital in Dallas, and my mom actually, I'm sorry, my mother had a nursing job at the hospital, and my father actually worked at a government contractor that built aircraft engines. So originally they left Ben and I behind. The plan was for them to come to the United States, sort of get settled in. And then once they got settled in, they were supposed to bring us, myself, Ben, my grandmother, to live with us. So that was the plan. In 1968, that's when my brother Cooper was born. He was born in Dallas, Texas. So in 1970, they decided to move to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, of all places, and really so they could actually move up in the world, if you will. Dallas was a very hard place for them at the point, very early. They moved to Mississippi because they had some job opportunities there. My mother obviously had a different job at a different hospital. And part of that is so they could bring us, myself and to come live with us, and our grandmother to come live with us. We lived there for a couple of years. It was Mississippi back in the 60s. When I moved there, expressly from Seoul, Korea, moving to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, was a culture shock. Not sure for Ben, but for me it was a culture shock. At the same time, in the 60s, there was a lot of things going on there. And shortly after, they decided we don't want to live in Mississippi anymore. Let's figure out where we want to move next. So they actually were thinking about moving to Minnesota, of all places. They actually went up to my dad took my mom, went up to Minnesota, spent a couple of days there, and got caught in a blizzard. So after that, they decided maybe this isn't the right place for us to live. So they decided let's go ahead and move someplace in the south, and they all good because I really think that this was ultimately became our home, and it is because they've lived here since 1972 to his last days as well as my mother's last days. So I'm really glad that we ended up there. About 1974 is when we brought back my grandfather, Suk Chung Yang, and Juno Yang also immigrated to the States and lived with us. And we moved to our house that my father currently lives in, 24 Orange Avenue in Orange Park, Florida. So while living there, 1974, I think this is to my best recollection, I think this is when he started to get very involved with the Korean community. Now that we're settled down, this is where we're going to live. He got settled down and he started getting involved with a lot of the Korean community, Korean church, and that's where we met a lot of yourselves, right? A lot of other people that live here. And in fact, if you go down in the first floor there's a historical picture album, and you can see where a lot of those pictures were from, actually from the 70s, probably back when we were starting that church. So, along with a lot of the other Korean families, the Kims, the Lees, the Parks, the Chums, the Chuns, the Lims, the Swans, that's when I believe we started the Korean community and a lot of the Korean church activity. So he got very invested and started participating in what's known as the Korean Association in North Florida. So at this point in time, I wanted to invite the elder to come and talk to about my dad's involvement in the Korean Association in North Florida. Would you come up and say the words you want to talk to him about? So he spent a lot of time, actually so much time, I think, to some degree. I don't remember very much of him while he was doing a lot of his work with the Korean Association. To be very honest with you, I didn't see him as much as I used to after that. But he spent a lot of time. Come on.
네, 먼저 고인에 계신 양정원 선생님 상과 고인의 명복입니다. 존경하는 유아들 여러분, 그리고 한인 동포 여러분, 오늘 우리는 잭슨빌 한인사회의 큰 어른이셨던 고 양정원 장로님을 추모하며 기쁜 애도의 마음으로 이 자리에 함께하였습니다. 고 양정원 장로님께서는 제2대, 3대, 11대 잭슨빌 한인장로를 임하시며 잭슨빌 한인사회의 발전과 화합 그리고 지역사회 활성화를 위해 평생 헌신하신 분이었습니다. 언제나 앞장서 봉사하시며 동포사회를 하나로 묶는 데 큰 역할을 하셨고 어려운 일이 있을 때마다 공동체를 위해 먼저 손 내밀어 주셨던 참진 지도자이셨습니다. 또한 장로님께서는 잭슨빌 한인장로교회 장로로 임직하시며 신앙 안에서 본이 되는 삶을 살아오셨습니다. 특별히 북한 나주 지역의 만낙 빵 공장을 세우시고 어려운 이웃들에게 빵을 나누어 주시며 선교와 사랑의 사역을 펼치셨던 일이 우리 모두의 마음속에 깊은 감동으로 남아 있습니다. 말보다 행동으로 사랑을 실천하셨던 장로님의 삶은 진정한 성품과 나름의 모습이었습니다. 장로님께서는 남기신 사랑과 헌신 그리고 공동체를 위해 봉사의 정신으로 앞으로도 잭슨빌 한인사회와 후배들에게 귀한 유산으로 오래 기억될 것입니다. 이제 우리는 사랑하는 장로님을 하느님 품에 올려드리며 마지막 인사를 드립니다. 고 양준호 장로님 영원한 안식을 누리소서. 감사합니다.
So for some of you guys, I guess in essence, he spent a larger part of 2 decades basically being involved either in one way with the Korean Association in North Florida. I think he was president a couple of times along with other people in other offices. So he was very active in the Korean Association in North Florida back then. After the Korean Association in North Florida, he started to get engaged a lot with this church as well. And he was doing, I believe, a lot of this church activity, but he started getting involved with what's known as the National Korean Presbyterian Church Councils and Organizations. He attended lots of, let's say, meetings, councils across the United States, and I believe even internationally. He went on very many trips because he was vested. He was truly, in essence, I think it was probably his calling in life to probably do this type of work and, you know, possibly doing his regular business that he held. But in any event, I mean, that's the kind of person he was. He was committed to helping others, helping this broader, bigger goal, you know, helping God, helping community, helping, you know, neighbors. He was very giving, I think he almost giving to a fault. I think he even gave a lot of his money to a lot of, let's just say, fraudsters. I mean, that's how giving he was. He just thought people needed money and he was going to try to give it to them. So, in essence, a lot of participation, a lot of support, a lot of involvement in the Korean Presbyterian Church organization. Even after in 1999, when my mother passed away, he started getting involved even more. Because to some degree, I think my mother was able to, you know, keep him at bay to some degree. And then when he retired, he really went all at it and got to the point where he went on one of these missions where he had to go through the Pentagon of the United States. This is back when, you may or may not remember this, I think they called it Operation Desert Storm. He, along with, I'm not sure who the other persons were, but I was flabbergasted when he said that the Pentagon is allowing him and this organization through the NKPC to deliver medications, pharmaceuticals, consumer items to needy Afghanistan village people. I think he did that. He spent a couple of months over there. Came back with some, let's just say, illnesses that I thought, you know, that should have stopped him from doing any more of this kind of stuff. But he didn't stop. He kept going. He just loved, he was just dedicated to doing that kind of stuff. So even at the age of, and this is 2019, and I remember this specific time, it was in March of 2019. He was 84 years old. And I think, Cooper, you might remember this pretty well, but I got a call when I was on a business trip. He left the voicemail on my cell phone. Apparently, he got into a two-car collision in Augusta, Georgia, because of one of these meetings that he went to in Augusta, Georgia. It was a T-bone accident. Both cars were totaled. He spent a month in the Augusta University Medical Center. He had 3 different surgeries. And I remember after, I believe it was the second surgery, he was just coming out of his anesthesia. And he was telling me as he woke up, he goes, Andy, you gotta come with me. You gotta come with me on my next trip. And he didn't realize that part of his surgery, he had an L2 fracture. Basically his spine was fractured. And he had to have titanium rods and screws put in his back. And he wasn't going to be moving or doing anything anytime soon. But that's what he wanted to do. That was his calling in life. And hopefully now, you know, he's up there, and maybe he's finally up there doing the kind of things that he's been wanting to do or needing to do. At least I hope so, because I mean, I couldn't do it. He asked me to do some of the things that he wanted to do, and I just told him, Dad, I can't, because I've got other things that I have commitments and responsibilities for. And I don't think he understood that to some degree. I think he accepted it, but he thought that I should take on that calling too. So if there's one thing that I sort of regret, is maybe I wish I had a calling like that. But some of the fun things that, I guess I'll just sort of stop there and maybe start thinking about some of the happy things that, you know, that I got from him or that I learned from him. I remember, this is probably when we were in middle school. My dad, I remember we went fishing in the St. Augustine Pier at that time, way back when. And he caught this massive 55-pound drum. That thing was so big. It took him 2 hours to reel it in. They actually had to have people climb down the banisters of the pier with the gaff tied up with the rope, and 4 or 5 people pulled up that 55-pound drum onto the St. Augustine Pier. They found a wheelbarrow. They took the wheelbarrow, they put the fish in our station wagon at the time so we could bring it home. So I remember that very vividly, because I think it was either Ben or Cooper laid right next to that drum in our garage, and that drum was bigger than they were. I think we, along with all our neighbors, basically ate that drum for the next 3 or 4 days. We just gave it away because we had so much of it. That's one thing that I just remember about him, that he was, give it away, we got too much, let's give it away. You know? The other thing that I remember, and actually two things. I love fishing. I love golf. Those 2 things that I got from him, because he taught me. I remember us going and fishing a lot when we were younger. He taught us how to do that. And I took it to the next level. I love fishing to the point where I love fishing and golf. And both of that I got from my dad. I remember on weekends, on Sundays and weekend Saturdays, we would watch golf on TV, and then I would try to follow in and try to, you know, swing the golf club like he did. And finally, I remember he got a membership at the Willow Lakes, which is in Orange, which is right there in Jacksonville. And me and Ben and Cooper, I think we would just be let off and spend the day out there golfing, and you know. So those are 2 things that I remember that he gave me, that, you know, I'll thank him for. Just wondering, anything Ben, Cooper, you guys want to say? No?